The Loud House has been my favorite animated series for a very long time. Ever since its debut on Nickelodeon back in 2016, I have been obsessed with this show. Every day I check to see if new episodes are announced or will be airing soon, and look at all kinds of different opinions on certain topics for the franchise online. This series has so much I could want out of an animated show, from its unique and fun animation to a wide cast of memorable characters, both inside and outside the titular setting, and of course, more than 300 episodes that could entertain me for weeks and even months. Add all that with a premise that could tell almost any type of story and tons of personal nostalgia, and you have an animated series more than worthy of being my all-time favorite. But with that said, even as a die-hard fan, there's absolutely no denying that this show has a huge plethora of flaws and issues, hence why I don't think it's the best show I've ever watched. I know I just said I consider it to be my favorite, but that's mainly because of the other shows I've fully watched having a lot less flaws and general things to dislike about them. So while The Loud House is my personal favorite thanks to its unlimited premise and sheer number of episodes with no sign of slowing down, I do consider other shows I fully watched to be better critically despite having way less episodes. As for these flaws, ironically, my biggest problem with the show has nothing to do with the show itself. Rather, it's the fandom. Most people who are already fans of the franchise are quite aware of this, but for those who aren't aware, for some odd and bizarre reason, a surprisingly decent portion of the Loud House fandom are, well, kind of nut jobs. I don't want to get too deep into this since I don't want to sound mean or offensive, plus the topic would make for a video of its own. Heck, other YouTubers have made their own videos, and there are a few wiki articles about this as well. But let's just say some portion of the fandom is either so creepy and strange it's hard to find the most fitting word for it, or just so incredibly toxic and negative toward the series for no real reason. Not only that, but it clearly seems that the show has been on a decline for the past few years. Back in 2016, people who watched Nickelodeon loved the series, and it seemed to be on the same level of popularity as SpongeBob at the time. This can be supported by the fact that nearly every episode for the first 3 seasons had over 1 million viewers when they first aired. Nowadays, however, the number of viewers have heavily decreased where there's now less than 500,000 each episode. And to be honest, I really don't know what caused this decline. Does it have something to do with the show's creator, Chris Savino, getting fired for gender conduct misallegations? Once again, that's a story for another time. And as a result, the quality of the show seems to have shifted without his involvement? Or did many people just gradually lose interest over time and there actually isn't a particular cause? Regardless though, in my honest opinion, I don't think the show has gone through any sort of decline. Yes, when you compare the first season of the show to the later seasons, there does seem like a difference in quality in a variety of ways, but to me, as long as the quality of episodes across the season are mostly good and barely bad, then I see no reason to call it a decline, or suddenly start hating on it for absolutely no reason, or just stop watching it entirely. Yep, even till this day, myself, as well as a few Loud House focused YouTubers you may be familiar with, and just general fans still watch the show for fun, all of whom don't care or listen to what the haters have to say, and that makes me happy. But anyways, going back to what I said earlier, whether or not you watch the show a ton, it's very easy to see that this series has a variety of problems, ones that often make the show feel unpleasant to watch. There may be some pretty bad and unlikable characters, and even moments where the main characters themselves are unlikable, or as some people would say, out of character. There are often plot inconsistencies and poor dialogue that make a story feel weak and lazily written. There can be forced humor and poor pacing if there isn't enough time to flesh everything out, etc., etc. All these factors that I mentioned, plus a few more, can be found in one specific negative field within the show: bad episodes. Now, bad episodes are, unfortunately, common for a lot of shows. Heck, pretty much every animated series, apart from the ones that have less than 100 episodes, and whether or not I've watched them, do have at least a few unpleasant episodes amongst dozens of great ones. Luckily, despite this happening, fans of that franchise would usually just rant on those bad episodes for about an hour and move on from it, and they would go back to enjoying the show and all of its not terrible and great episodes. As a result, the quality of said animated series would go back to being positive, and its fandom would still be mostly retained. Unfortunately, the same isn't quite said for The Loud House. Whenever this show has a terrible episode, fans seem to get more erratic than I feel they should typically be getting. Like, I agree it's bad, but saying it's one of the absolute worst episodes of the entire series feels like an overreaction. Of course, that all depends on the episode you're talking about. But when you think about it, while I do still think certain people are overreacting, considering the fact that many of the show's most hated episodes follow a similar trend of one specific character, who I don't need to say the name of because it's always that person, being treated like nothing but utter crap and other miscellaneous things happening that just make the episode worse and worse, it's not too surprising to see why these episodes are so hated. As for these bad Loud House episodes, like I said, there's no denying that they exist and are of course hated by fans. In fact, let's actually take a quick trip down memory lane and reflect on a few of the show's worst moments. The Greenhouse tried to teach a simple moral by saving the environment and reducing electricity usage, but failed miserably at doing so by making every character unlikable and botching the lesson learned in the end. Brawl in the Family, an absolutely atrocious episode where every character is stupid and fight with each other over completely dumb things, and the fact this whole conflict started because of a stupid dress automatically shows how awful this episode is. House Flip, probably the dumbest episode of the entire series, where not only is every character dumber than Homer Simpson and Richard Watterson combined, but the fact the only sympathizable character is the one who's often a sneaky cheapskate just shows how pathetic this episode is. And those were just a small handful of terrible episodes I just mentioned. There's at least a dozen more I wish to not go back to, but as bad as these episodes are, I'll admit they could have been even worse. I could see on paper that these episodes have potential to be really good and really funny, but it would seem that it failed in execution. Who knows what the writers and everyone on the staff were thinking while they were making these episodes, but surely they thought they were making something enjoyable, even though it translated very poorly according to the fandom. Either way, The Loud House has plenty of ups and downs, and although there have been a variety of episodes that just feel totally unwatchable for how critically bad they are, as well as just general scenes across the entire show that may be filled with bad feelings, I wouldn't say any of the bad episodes are one of the worst things I've seen on television, and none of them have formed a drastic negative opinion on the franchise. But unfortunately, one episode managed to accomplish this. This episode was so bad when it first aired that it not only received a general negative reaction from pretty much everyone and led to dozens of fanfics, but it is still being hated on to this very day, and there's even a poll online to get this episode banned on live television. In fact, this is probably an over-exaggerated prediction of mine, but I wouldn't be surprised if this episode is not only one of, if not the main reason the show is currently in a quote-unquote decline, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this episode partially contributed to the firing of the show's creator. All of this, plus what I personally think and more, make it easy to see why this one singular episode is agreed to be the absolute worst one in the entire show, and March 13th, 2025 marked the infamous 8-year anniversary of this abomination. The episode I am talking about is of course, the one and only, No Such Luck. Ever since this episode came into existence, it has been nothing but a detriment to the whole franchise. Well, that, plus the other terrible episodes I mentioned as well as the infamous live action stuff, but let's not talk about that. No Such Luck has really left a powerful but negative impact on the show and its fandom for how terrible it is. Now, the funny thing is, lately, I've been wondering if No Such Luck really is either my pick for the worst episode critically, or just my least favorite, or both. As I was working on the script for this video, I got a comment on my Loud House Season 2 ranking video by a user named Whoa Is That Coiny, who said, "I'm gonna be real, No Such Luck isn't that bad." And I'm gonna be honest, to an extent, I agree. Not to the point where I think it's suddenly not one of the absolute worst episodes, of course not, but I actually do think other episodes like Brawl in the Family genuinely have worse writing. The main issue is that No Such Luck has this one impending factor, which I'll bring up again multiple times later in the video, that automatically makes myself and a majority of the fandom instantly accuse it of being the worst episode in the series. Maybe if it wasn't for that impending factor, the reception toward the episode wouldn't be as overly negative and probably wouldn't lead to so much hate down the show's line. Unfortunately, that factor does exist within the episode, which might have led to the show's current status. And well, it also might have led you to this video. Today, I will be doing a retrospective on No Such Luck, jumping into the whole thing as I find and explain nearly every one of this episode's problems, from the nitpicks to the bad to the downright ugly. Even though plenty of other people have done their own reviews on this abomination, I really wanted to give my own perspective as someone who's a passionate fan of the franchise. This video is also pretty special to me because it is my very first commentary video on the channel. That's right, after dozens of no commentary videos that were just video gameplay and miscellaneous edited videos, I am beginning to start work on different types of videos that all feature full commentary, analyses, predictions, rankings, you name it. I know these videos won't be the best looking or well edited, I am just starting out after all, but I hope to improve more with each video. So if you guys have any tips on how I can improve, whether they be small or huge, or just any feedback in general, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, as a quick side note, I wanted to get this video done on time for its anniversary on March 13th, but my plans quickly changed, and the more I was working on the video, the more I knew I wasn't going to get it done on time. I am still a little upset about it, but it's not a big deal. Other than that, I'd still like it if you guys left a comment in general about or related to the topic of the video. Furthermore, it would also make me happy if you guys just left a like and considered subscribing to the channel. Like I said, I will be sure to improve my editing skills, and I promise with your support I'll not only be able to definitely improve, but also further expand my channel to even greater levels, if that makes any sense. Basically, the more people that are subscribed to my channel, the more motivated I'll be to upgrade my content. I really want to make a ton of interesting and fun videos for you guys to watch, specifically on animation and Nintendo, so it would be awesome if you subscribed. And if you enjoyed this video even a little bit, I'm sure you'll enjoy whatever I have in store next. But now, I think this is far too long of an intro, heck I'm already past 2,200 words, so without further ado, let's finally jump into why No Such Luck is easily considered to be the absolute worst episode of The Loud House. So the episode seems like it's off to a simple start with Lincoln enjoying breakfast in the dining room, but things quickly take a turn when the sisters enter the picture and Lincoln immediately hides under the table. The sisters are all talking about some of their planned special events, such as Lori having a golf tournament, Lucy having a grave digging competition, stuff like that. Each of the sisters are excited and are totally supportive of one another, clearly going to attend each of their activities. Lincoln, on the other hand, for some reason, doesn't feel the same, and instead avoids the sisters and secretly exits the dining room. It's here where we get the iconic viewing of Lincoln talking to the viewers, a running gag many fans, including myself, enjoy, since it gives us a direct perspective of the character talking, though it is always Lincoln 95% of the time. It's also here where we get my first personal nitpick of the episode. Nitpicks are just very minor issues that barely have an effect on something, so there's no need to get worked up or discuss it for a long time. But yeah, as Lincoln was talking to the viewers, I personally didn't like it when he said, "Well, you don't know my life." The reason this line bothers me isn't because of how annoyed Lincoln looks, though you could consider that another nitpick, but because we kind of already know what Lincoln's life is at this point, at least for those who've watched the entire first season and seen the theme song at least 30 times. It's easy to see what Lincoln has to go through almost every day, so him saying that feels like a slap in the face at times. But again, all of this was just a nitpick, so let's move on with the episode. So as Lincoln explains to the viewers, because he lives with a big family and each, or most, of his sisters, plus parents, has their own personal events, which to themselves could be seen as big moments in their lives, Lincoln is often forced to attend these events so he can support them. However, our white-haired protagonist doesn't view it like that, and instead just wishes he could have some personal time to himself. This is where we get into the first big problem with the episode, how Lincoln is characterized. I don't see many instances where people talk about how poorly written Lincoln is in this episode, but considering the fact that his family is at least 10 times worse, it makes sense. However, that doesn't exactly make Lincoln completely innocent either, so let's quickly go over what makes him poorly characterized in this episode. Now, much like all protagonists of animated shows, Lincoln of course has his own flaws, and being a young 11 to 12-year-old boy, his flaws are pretty basic, those being that he has moments of being selfish and or deceitful, maybe even acting lazy at times. Despite this, however, he is still a good kid at heart and will always do the right thing in the end, which is why I and many fans really like him. But the way this episode handles his selfishness really rubs me the wrong way. Basically, the main problem with Lincoln in this episode is that, for some weird reason, he is completely oblivious oblivious to the main reason he is supposed to attend his sister's events, to support them. It's stated multiple times throughout the episode that the reason everyone in the family is showing up to each other's events is not that it's a waste of time and that they would rather be alone, it's that they can be supportive of each other like a family should be. Despite this, however, Lincoln just doesn't get this until the scene where he apologizes to his family for saying he isn't you-know-what. Even though Lincoln is being completely selfish and oblivious, I'll be honest and admit that on some level, I can relate to him. I remember when I was young that I always wanted to stay home and have nothing but me time, and would get bummed out whenever I was forced to attend an event, although I would usually enjoy my time by the end regardless. And with the scenario Lincoln is in, yeah, I could see how annoyed he would be barely having any free time. Still though, that doesn't change the fact that Lincoln, the same brother who loves and takes good care of his family as seen in episodes like Left in the Dark and Project Loud House, is acting both oblivious and extra selfish than he normally is. The worst part about this is that I think the problem of how Lincoln is characterized could be fixed very easily. I feel like that if Lincoln said something along the lines of, "It's not that I don't want to support my family, I just wish I could have a little bit more free time to myself, you know?" That line would have made him sound more in character in my opinion. He would still be acting selfish because he doesn't want to go to his family's events, but at least I would know that he genuinely does want to support his family. Another thing that could have been done was have Lincoln rant for a bit how he's the only one that doesn't have any special events, and this makes him feel not as special and jealous of the rest of his family. This would make Lincoln more relatable to some people, and it would even connect with the plot of the Loud House movie. But unfortunately, he just comes across as a selfish protagonist with barely any care for his family. This would probably fit better for other animated protagonists who are known for being regularly selfish, but it just doesn't work with Lincoln, at least on this level for me. Anyways, Lincoln's character in this episode is only the first of many big problems, and of course it's not even the worst one, so let's move on with the episode. Although Lincoln manages to avoid most of his sisters, he, unfortunately for him, runs into Lynn. She asks him if he's going to her softball game to be supportive, but Lincoln says no and claims that he has more important business. Reading a comic book? Okay, look, I know Lincoln and other characters in the show are known for making lame excuses, but the excuse Lincoln just made was on a whole other level of selfishness and stupidity, and even lazy on the writer's part. What makes this scenario worse is that Lynn outright says that Lincoln is the only one in the family who has to come out to support her, yet Lincoln denies this and says that he was busy supporting 6 other sisters, showing how completely oblivious, selfish, and just plain stupid he acts in this episode, like I said before. So, to retaliate this, Lynn threateningly holds a baseball bat in her hands and asks Lincoln if he won't reconsider, and the next shot immediately shows Lincoln at the game. I'll be honest, even though what Lynn did wasn't right, I actually don't blame her too much since Lincoln basically said he refuses to be supportive. So during the next scene, we see Lincoln at the game and, despite wearing a hat and foam finger, is being completely unsupportive with an extremely dull look on his face. Okay, look, I know Lincoln doesn't want to be there and was basically threatened by LJ to attend her game, but still, I gotta ask, would it kill him to just show a little bit of support? Just seeing that dumb expression on his face really bothers me and further emphasizes how he's being extra selfish than he normally is, even acting out of character to an extent. Anyways, during the end of the game, Lynn's team, the Squirrels, are winning 3-0. Right before Lynn pitches, she performs her signature Good Luck Rituals, which is a weird Cossack dance for the softball gods. This of course implies that Lynn is superstitious, which I don't know if that's common for a lot of athletes, but it's definitely clear for Lynn that she takes superstitiousness very seriously. After Lynn performs her weird ritual, she pitches the ball, but much to the shock of everyone, the opposing team hits the ball out of the park each time, resulting in Lynn's team losing in the final inning, much to Lynn's high dismay. And unfortunately, if the episode wasn't already ugly due to how Lincoln is characterized, well, it's about to get really ugly now. As Lynn walks in disappointment, she encounters Lincoln, who says he's sorry that she lost, but considering how unsupportive he was being, I bet he really doesn't care. However, Lynn quickly hides behind a dumpster next to her, and while holding a rotten banana peel and startling, she tells Lincoln to stay back and says that he is bad luck. She continues by saying that her team has been on a winning streak, and the one time Lincoln shows up to one of her games, they lose. Lincoln denies that he's bad luck, but Lynn re-denies him back and bans him from attending her future games. She even gets in his face saying,
"Now scram!" and
does her weird hut-hut dance as she walks away. It was this moment that not only led to the abysmal downfall of this episode, but also began the hatred for Lynn Loud Jr. from a variety of fans, and possibly the start for the Loud House's major controversy and disturbing fandom. This scene only lasts 30 seconds, but it creates humongous problems that never get resolved. First, we have to talk about the elephant, or really, the athlete in the room, Lynn. I actually want to briefly discuss how I feel about her character. Really, just like all the main characters, I love Lynn. Her tomboyish personality plus her competitive and energetic nature makes her a fun character to watch. She has good dynamics with her family, and there's no denying that the Loud House would not be the same without her. But with that said, it's honestly not that hard to say that her flaws make her the least likable of the main characters. For example, the episode Sitting Bull portrays her as completely unnurturing, and the episode On the Ice clearly shows just how superstitious she can be. The latter is often regarded as her worst character trait according to fans. The worst part regarding these flaws of hers is that she never ever learns them and just continues to act the exact same, even though the aforementioned episodes clearly wanted her to learn something. But yeah, with these flaws and poor traits, it's not hard to see why many fans, myself included, either dislike her or have her as their least favorite sibling. In my case, it's the latter though, because like I said, despite her flaws, I still love her just like the rest of her family. However, as I stated before, this scene in the episode pretty much began her downfall in terms of being hated by the fandom, so let's go over why she is awful in not only this scene, but in pretty much the entire episode. The first issue is that neither Lincoln nor Lynn mention that even if Lincoln is bad luck, Lynn was the one who forced him to come in the first place. This lack of communication happens in a lot of poorly written episodes, and it really feels like the story would have played out completely differently if the characters had just said the obvious thing. Unfortunately, the writers almost never have these characters do this, and it makes the scene feel lazily written and honestly forced. If Lincoln had pointed out that she forced him to come, then maybe Lynn wouldn't have jumped to such a stupid assumption. Or instead, Lynn could have pointed out how she saw Lincoln be completely unsupportive in the crowd, and maybe that's the reason her team lost, despite being a superstition. There were multiple ways for this scene to be better handled, but the writers went with possibly the worst one, thus the episode truly starts to become pure awful. However, do you know what I think is the real big problem with Lynn in this episode, besides her superstitions? It's that, strongly judging by her tone and facial expressions, she not only outright believes Lincoln is bad luck, but also somehow believes that he wants her to fail on purpose, which is just the stupidest thing ever. And this is supported in the following scene where Lynn tells Lenny that Lincoln will somehow ruin Lenny's fashion show because he's bad luck. Like, do I even need to explain how stupid this is? Going back to what I said, Lynn forced Lincoln to come to her game and even threatened him with a baseball bat if he didn't agree to come. So Lynn can't just blame Lincoln and assume he's bad luck just because she lost, especially since she forced him to come in the first place. LJ is characterized so awfully in this episode, and it's not hard at all to see why. Just look at her facial expression in this scene. That's the face of someone who's so insensitive and cruel enough to assume a person is bad luck, and somehow actually think they're doing it on purpose. I could maybe slightly understand Lynn if she actually called out Lincoln on how unsupportive he was being, but she clearly doesn't seem to care about that, so why should I? What I think the writers could have and should have done to better characterize Lynn in this episode is, instead of her acting cruel and insensitive, she could have had a more cautious approach to the situation. Like, during that scene where Lynn first mentions the term bad luck, she instead could have said something like, "Look, I know it's not your fault, especially since I did force you to come, but please just stop coming to my games. I don't know why, but it feels like a strange and unlucky coincidence the one time you show up, my team loses a game. Again, it's not your fault, just don't come." If LJ had said this instead of what she actually said, the scene would have been way better. Granted, it would still be really stupid what with how superstitious she is, but compared to how unapologetic she really acts, it would have been at least 10 times better. Lynn just shows a complete lack of empathy, and it's what makes her the most hateable character in the episode, only being slightly above her sisters and parents. Granted, she isn't the one who continues to hammer down this whole dumb bad luck superstition. That's still all on Lincoln, so now let's continue in the episode where it becomes even worse. The episode continues with the exact scene in the beginning of Lincoln having breakfast while reading a comic book. Lenny pops in and asks Lincoln if he'll be coming to her fashion show, but LJ jumps in and warns Lenny that Lincoln will somehow ruin her fashion show because he's bad luck. Again, Lynn is acting really insensitive over a dumb superstition, and just can't get over how she lost one game of softball even though that's a part of sports. Lincoln tries to deny Lynn once again about this superstition, but instead he immediately decides to agree with Lynn and admits that he is bad luck. Lincoln tells Lenny some potential bad things that could happen at her fashion show, and she instantly agrees that Lincoln shouldn't come. Somehow, despite being only one instance with no actual proof, this dumb superstition and lie just becomes easily believable. In the next scene, Lincoln is watching TV and Lana, my favorite loud sister, pounces into the scene and, for some reason, ties Lincoln up just to ask him if he's coming to her alligator wrestling match. I love Lana, but I gotta ask, was that really necessary? Granted, it wasn't painful or anything, but still. Lenny pulls Lana in and tells her that Lincoln is bad luck, despite the fact that, once again, nothing bad or unlucky has actually happened. Lincoln, however, reluctantly agrees and Lana changes her mind about bringing him along. We then get a boring montage where Lincoln says to each of his sisters that he's bad luck, and the sisters easily believe him. So Lincoln gets out of going to Lola's pageant, Luann's performance, and even Lily's playdate. This is another nitpick, but why would Lincoln be invited to Lily's playdate for babies at all? Was he meant to be an authority figure or something? I don't know, and it doesn't even matter. What does matter though is how incredibly foolish the family is acting over this superstition. Like, nothing actually bad has happened so far, but everyone's quick to believe that Lincoln is bad luck. I guess this paranoid superstition runs in the family. Or maybe not with everyone, because right in the middle of the montage, Lincoln comes across Lisa, the smartest one in the family, who claims that there's no such thing as luck and that it's all hooey. Lori enters the scene and says that Lisa literally has a point, and then she tells Lincoln that he is coming to her golf tournament and directly says,
"This family supports each other."
So what does Lincoln do in all this? He takes Lori's clubs, pretends to trip, and accidentally dents Lori's sand wedge. As a result, Lori and Lisa instantly assume Lincoln is bad luck and ban him from attending their events, all while Lincoln pretends to act miserable and give an incredibly smug look to the camera. Okay, if Lincoln wasn't already acting like a selfish douchebag, he's definitely acting like one now. Lori outright tells him that this family supports each other, yet he isn't even being oblivious about it. He's just being a selfish moron who doesn't care one bit. Like, what if Lori actually needed that sand wedge for a tournament? We never hear anything about Lori's tournament after the fact, so if Lincoln is somehow lucky, maybe she didn't actually need it. But if she really did need it, then Lincoln likely just screwed Lori out of winning the tournament, all because he wanted some time to himself. The fact he's willing to potentially screw his sisters out of achieving their goals, intentional or not, just to get free time for himself is just, man. What's even crazier is that this is somehow not only Lincoln's worst performance in the series, at least in my opinion, but somehow his family are even worse in this episode, and we'll be seeing how in just a moment. So as the Loud sisters and parents leave the house, Lincoln gleefully and sarcastically says,
"So sorry to miss it all."
It's here where we get another dumb montage of Lincoln doing stuff he apparently rarely gets the chance to do, such as dancing around in a white shirt, sunglasses, and underwear, reading a comic book around different parts of his house in his underwear, and drinking a whole gallon of milk in his underwear. Man, Lincoln sure has a weird habit of doing things in his underwear. Then again, I could relate. Also, couldn't he have just done these things earlier, regardless of his family being there and anything they have to say? That would have been a much better use of time than lying and pretending to be bad luck. It doesn't help the fact that Lincoln was already not doing anything, so I don't get the fuss he is making in the first place. The next day, Lincoln sees his breakfast on the living room coffee table, and it's here where we find out that even the parents are buying into this bad luck superstition. Lincoln, however, doesn't mind and sees it as a perk since he can play video games while eating breakfast. And with that, we're now only halfway through the episode, and I'll admit, it's not that bad. I mean, yeah, Lincoln is being the most selfish and careless character, making this one of his worst performances in the show, as well as how incredibly incompetent the parents and sisters are when they immediately believe this bad luck superstition, even though nothing bad has happened. Not to mention this whole conflict started with LG being a superstitious, hypocritical, and unapathetic character herself. But other than that, it hasn't been incredibly bad. Unfortunately, I'm about to eat my words because now we are truly beginning to sink into the abyss of this awful train wreck. Buckle up, Loud crowd, because things are about to get ugly. So later in the night, the Loud family are off to see a movie, and Lincoln wants to join them and calls dibs on holding the popcorn. Oh, so Lincoln is selfish enough to refuse to attend his sister's events because he apparently doesn't have enough free time, but when it's time to go to a movie, he's suddenly on board. He's just continuing to be more and more of a careless person, only caring about himself. However, it's here where the family truly starts to become bad characters themselves in this episode, and somehow manage to surpass Lincoln in terms of bad characterization. After Lynn screams and leaps out of the house in fear, how rudely I might add, the family makes an argument that because of Lincoln's bad luck, something bad can go wrong. It's here where we start to hear some really lame excuses from the family that could occur. Like, Lola says the movie could sell out, even though I believe at the time this episode takes place, movie tickets could be bought online, so there would be no need to worry about sellouts. Then Luna says something even more stupid. She says they could get seated behind a lady with a beehive, and I'm sitting down thinking like, what? What kind of movie theater would allow beehives into the theater, and what kind of person thinks it would be a good idea to bring one in the first place? That's definitely the dumbest excuse of the entire episode, and it's coming from Luna of all people. Then again, people in the real world were somehow able to bring in actual live chickens to the theatrical premiere of the Minecraft movie, but I don't want to get into that. Lisa also says how someone could get scalded with molten butter, which I'm not even going to bother getting into. The point is, Lincoln's family is becoming extremely paranoid and stupid, even though, once again, nothing bad has happened. Lincoln himself, however, is bummed not going to the movie, but at least gets to enjoy more me time to himself, or so he thinks. After the family leaves, we get the exact same montage of Lincoln enjoying his free time, only now he feels bored and starts to get sick of it, and with gloomy music playing in the background. And when his family gets back from the movie, he sighs, probably wishing he was there with them. As a quick break from all this negativity, I'll be a tad bit positive and say that while I still disapprove of Lincoln's behavior in this episode, once again, I do kind of relate to him in this scene. I'm usually someone who prefers or doesn't mind being alone during most of their free time, but even I have a limit of how much soloness I can take before rather wanting to be with other people. So despite the bad execution, at least the scenario is once again kind of relatable. Anyways, like I said, after the annoying montage, the sisters and parents arrive home happily after watching the movie, leaving Lincoln to sigh. And now, the abysmalness of this episode, as well as the impending factor I mentioned back in the beginning, truly begins in 3, 2, 1... Next, Lincoln comes out of the bathroom, and right before he can enter his room, he sees a note on his door, which is also boarded up and covered in hazard tape. That's a small yet incredibly harsh and offensive detail I completely never noticed. I only just discovered it when making this video. Lincoln reads the note, which says, and I quote, "Sorry Lincoln, but you can't sleep here tonight, we just can't risk it." He then turns around, rightfully calling out how stupid this whole thing is, but all 10 of his sisters angrily shout, "No!" and slam their doors. What the actual frick? Sorry about my intense anger, it's just really hard to keep your cool after watching something on TV that's absolutely infuriating. But seriously, who on the staff thought this was a good idea? Having the family completely shun Lincoln like this over a stupid superstition? It doesn't help the fact that none of the sisters gave any excuse as to what could go wrong by having Lincoln sleep in the house because he's bad luck. Granted, even if they had, the excuses would have been very stupid regardless, but still, a really lame excuse is better than no excuse at all. What is the family so afraid of that could happen? Are they afraid one of them will get sick in the middle of the night and that it will spread to everyone in the house, like what happened in One Flew Over the Loud House? Are they afraid a giant asteroid will crash down on their house while they're all asleep? What stupid thing could possibly happen to them that causes them to do something as heinous as this? Oh wait, I know what they're most afraid of. But you know what really grinds my gears the most about this scene? It's how incredibly mean-spirited all of the sisters are acting, just like how Lynn was acting after she lost her game. Like, when the family was making dumb excuses earlier, at least they looked guilty and felt bad when leaving Lincoln, disregarding once again how pathetic this superstition is. Here though, there's just none of that. All 10 of Lincoln's sisters are acting like the most unapologetic and loathsome people of all time, just from their mean expressions and rude actions. Even Lily the baby is acting this way. You know an episode of The Loud House is seriously up when the baby is acting mean-spirited of all characters, and the fact that they're all totally cool with this act of cruelty for thinking their brother/son is bad luck on purpose, mind you, it's just an enormous facepalm filled with rage and utter disappointment. So after being kicked out of his own bedroom and the entire house, this leads Lincoln to finding a place to sleep outside. Although I don't know why he didn't try to find a place to sleep inside the house though, like either on the living room couch or even the bathtub like he did in Space Invader. I guess maybe off screen he tried to, but his insensitive family wouldn't allow it, or the more logical answer, it never even crossed the writer's minds since they seem to have had a habit of putting Lincoln through the ringer during the early era of the show. While outside, Lincoln tries to get into Charles's doghouse, but even the dang dog is insensitive over this dumb bad luck superstition and growls at him. As a result, where does Lincoln end up sleeping? On a pile of leaves on the dirty ground in the open air with a squirrel on his head. Can we just talk about how depressing this is? Just imagine being forced to sleep outside all because your family is so paranoid over a ridiculous superstition, outright calling you bad luck. Thank God the weather was decent all night. Can you imagine if the weather was much colder, or worse, if it was raining the entire night? Would Lincoln's family really let him suffer like that? Obviously I'd say no, but given how they are acting in this episode, it really seems like they would, which just sucks. And look, Lincoln did kind of bring this upon himself since this was his idea in the first place, which he does bring up in just a moment, but that still makes the actions of his family inexcusable. And yet somehow, despite this act of cruelty, things manage to get even worse. The next morning, Lincoln tries to enter the house, but the door is locked and he tells his family from outside that he thinks they locked him out. As a response to this, there is no response and a bowl of cereal is shoved through the doggy door. Lincoln overhears his family saying that they're going to the beach and wants to join them, but his dumb as heck family makes more ridiculous excuses, like how someone could get attacked by a shark, caught in a riptide, or stung by a jellyfish. Lana calls peeing on the wound if that happens, which is absolutely grotesque and disgusting, and I don't know why I bother typing it in the script. Lincoln, clearly and rightfully upset about this, begs his family to be reasonable about how stupid this whole thing is, and what is the response to this? Lola, acting all pissed off, claims once again that Lincoln is bad luck, and to add insult to injury, she puts her itty-bitty finger on the freaking doggy door and pushes Lincoln's head out of it, all as she angrily says,
You're bad luck, Lincoln. You can't come.
Okay, now the family is just being completely unreasonable and their actions are fully inexcusable. What kind of sisters and parents leave their own brother/son locked outside all because of some freaking superstition, claiming that he's bad luck when nothing bad has actually happened? At this point, it's very easy to see why this episode is absolutely despised by basically everyone. And look, Lincoln did kind of bring this upon himself, which he does acknowledge, but it's not like he never wanted to root against his family, and while he definitely was acting immature with breaking Lori's golf club, that's still not enough to warrant putting him through any of this. Even though Lincoln himself is badly characterized, his family is just a whole lot worse, and it's not hard to see why fans focus mainly on the sisters and parents. That's another thing I should have mentioned and brought up earlier. I heard someone once say that people never pay attention to how Lincoln is technically the culprit for this whole ordeal since it was his plan in the first place, but personally, I knew from day one, the moment I saw this episode, that Lincoln was ultimately, though unfortunately, the one responsible for this conflict and that he also acts kind of out of character. However, like I just said, the way his family acts is just completely inexcusable, so it's not hard at all to see why the fandom throws nearly all their hate at them. So after blaming this whole catastrophe on himself, what does Lincoln finally decide to do? Own up to his mistake and reveal to his family what he was doing and trying to reason with them. He goes to the front of the house with a megaphone and tells his family that he has a confession to make. He reveals that, despite how paranoid they're all acting, he's not bad luck and that he just let them believe that so he can avoid going to their stuff. Lincoln says it was a really selfish thing to do and that they all need to support each other and that he's really sorry. Finally, Lincoln acts how I expect him to act. It took some poor characterization and badly written moments, but finally Lincoln is acting like himself and how he should have been acting the entire episode. So after this, you're probably expecting the family to be surprised and upset with Lincoln, but still forgive him and let him back into the house, or a shocking yet cruel twist where the family knew what they were doing the entire time and were just messing with Lincoln, waiting for him to own up to how selfish he was being, kind of like what happened in Sound of Silence. Well, unfortunately, the staff had other ideas. After Lincoln finishes apologizing, LJ tells Lincoln that if he is bad luck, then how come she won every game after she banned Lincoln from attending? Mr. Grouse, who overheard Lincoln's confessional, tells him that Lynn makes a point, but Lincoln just tells him to go back inside. And what happens instead is the family still believes that Lincoln is bad luck and completely dismiss what he said, shutting the curtains and windows on him. Okay, what is happening? Are you seriously trying to tell me the family is this brain dead when it comes to luck, to the point where they're all committing child abuse? What the actual frick? Look, there have been a variety of moments before and after this episode where Lincoln has been put through the ringer. Even if most of those moments are where a huge group of characters, usually his family most of the time, verbally assault him over some stupid reason, and Lincoln himself has sometimes did something to warrant some type of punishment. But literally whatever kind of comeuppance he gets is always or strongly feels 10 times worse than whatever he did. It's a big problem and I know a lot of fans have with the early seasons of the show, and I'm really glad this was heavily toned down in the later seasons, but it's always a problem I have when revisiting the beginning of the show. Out of all the episodes in the entire series, No Such Luck easily takes the cake in having the absolute worst treatment of Lincoln, regardless of what he did or how he's acting. Literally being locked outside of the house in his pajamas and being forced to sleep outside, all because his stupid family is so freaking worried about bad luck. Oh, and don't think I didn't hear Lin Loud Sr. say his infamous "step further away from the house" line. This abysmal action right here is the impending factor I mentioned way back in the intro. Had Lincoln's family not committed such an act of cruelty, no matter their reasoning, then this episode probably would have been a lot less hated. It likely would have still been disliked, but had the Loud sisters and parents not acted so heartless, they wouldn't have treated Lincoln the way they did, and thus the backlash would have been a lot less cruel, meaning no dark fanfics or even a petition to ban it. This is a side note, but this episode contradicts the events of the season 1 episode Ties That Bind, where the Loud siblings are worried their parents are going to get rid of them, only for the whole thing to be a misunderstanding about ties. The parents outright said they would never get rid of any of their kids, and yet here they are kicking out their only son for the stupidest reason ever. What's even more baffling is that both episodes were written by the same writer, Carla Sakas Shropshire. Look, I have nothing against Carla. I think she is a great writer, and she was responsible for writing some of my favorite episodes in the show, such as Roughin' It, Community Disservice, and especially Antisocial, but even I can't deny that she really fumbled the bag when writing this episode. However, I definitely do not blame solely her for how this episode turned out. Everyone who contributed to the production of this episode is equally to blame, except for maybe the voice actors, but then again, I don't know the full process of creating a piece of animated television. Plus, if there's one sole person to blame for this episode, then it's honestly the creator himself, Chris Savino. I think I read somewhere online that Savino might have experienced a similar and unfortunate scenario as Lincoln when he was young, and if that is true, then obviously he has my sympathy, but even so, turning this experience he had into an episode for an animated show aimed for younger audiences was a really stupid idea. What makes it even worse is that I think I also read somewhere else online that Savino actually says Lincoln deserved the treatment he got in this episode, which is just, what the frick? If that's actually true, then he's definitely the one to blame for this episode existing. All in all, I can go on and on and on about this whole negative ordeal and the many effects it left, but I think I've said enough. And like I said in the beginning, pretty much everyone who's seen the show is completely aware of how abysmal No Such Luck is, and how it triggers the fandom in the worst way possible. Even if there are any redeeming qualities, or other episodes somehow have even worse writing, this episode is what will always be the most hated and despised one in the whole series, and the impacts it left may never go away. Anyways, I'm over 8,600 words in the script right now, so let's just keep this thing rolling and try to get it finished. Alright, we got about 2 minutes left in the episode, so let's quickly get through the home stretch and be done with this awful nightmare. So Lincoln has the bright idea to dress up as the mascot for Lynn's softball team, the Squirrels, and if Lynn wins the game, hopefully his family won't see him as bad luck. How Lincoln got his hands on and dressed up as the mascot is never explained, but it doesn't really matter and who really cares at this point. During this, we also get a major hypocritical moment where one of the baseball announcers says that Lynn and her team are looking like roadkill because they're losing, and Luna says,
Way harsh, dude!
You do realize that the entire Loud family wrongfully locks Lincoln out of the house for no good reason that we've addressed multiple times, right? Luna, I love you, but this is the one time I'm going to say this.
Oh, shut up already.
So anyways, back to Lincoln's plan. He watches the game while in the squirrel suit, though much to his dismay, things aren't going good for Lynn's team as they're losing badly, and this leads Lincoln to begin worrying if he really is bad luck. It's the bottom of the 9th inning, Lynn is batting and has 2 outs, plus all bases are loaded, and Lynn gets 2 strikes. It all comes down to this. Either Lynn will swing the bat and hit the ball so hard she gets a grand slam and win the game, or she'll miss it and end up feeling completely ashamed. As Lincoln wonders if he could move into Lisa's bunker, the ball is pitched, Lynn hits it, and oh my god, it's a grand slam! Lynn has done it! She's won the game for her team! Oh my god, I can't believe it! She actually won! This is amazing! Incredible! Unbelievable! I can't... Wait, why am I celebrating this? Lynn doesn't deserve to win after how she's been acting the entire episode. The family picks her up and celebrates her victory as Lincoln in the squirrel suit joins in. Lola tells the squirrel, obviously not knowing it's Lincoln, that this is a family moment, and it's here where Lincoln takes the mask off, revealing that he was here the whole time and that he's not actually bad luck. Lynn and the family rightfully apologize to Lincoln, even though he deserves way more than a simple apology after what he had to go through, and you think this is where the episode finally stops being abysmal, but unfortunately, this moment of reconciliation is immediately cut short when Rita says another very infamous line in the episode, and I quote, "Sorry we sold all your furniture."
sounds a little convoluted.
Okay, before I go all Benson here, there is a chance that what Rita just said could have been a joke since we never actually see that happening, and it's not like the family would ever be willing to do something so morbid and heartless. But considering the fact they literally abused Lincoln in the first place over a notorious bad luck superstition without any remorse, on top of still shutting him out after he confessed what he did wrong in the first place, I actually have every reason to believe this wasn't a joke and that the sisters and parents literally did go through with this atrocious decision. Just what were they thinking? I'm not just talking about the family, by the way. This applies to those a part of the staff who made this decision. Seriously, who out of everyone that was working on this episode thought this joke was either a good idea or funny in the first place? Heck, who finds any of these Lincoln torture moments even the least bit amusing? Keep in mind that when I say torture, I'm being metaphorical. I feel like fans just use that word as an easier and shorter way of saying moments that are totally mean-spirited towards Lincoln or something. I don't know, just know that I'm exaggerating when I say torture. But back to what I was saying, who finds any of these mean-spirited moments to be funny? Because, let me tell you, I've been with this fandom for nearly an entire decade, and I promise you that I have not found a single person who finds these moments amusing in any way. It just leads to frustration and bitterness to me and everyone. Like I said earlier, I'm really glad the modern era of the show barely has any mean-spirited moments towards Lincoln, or any character that doesn't deserve it for that matter, because if it did, I would honestly be a lot more negative towards the franchise for painting such toxic moments in a show aimed for younger audiences, but can still be enjoyed by anyone of all ages. Back to the episode after that infamous line, Lincoln reveals to the audience that his family no longer see him as bad luck anymore, and in fact, they actually think he's good luck. However, apparently only when Lincoln is in the squirrel suit. At the beach, Lola angrily shouts at Lincoln to put the head back on before they get stung by a jellyfish, so despite what Lincoln just said about no longer being seen as bad luck, and also given what Lola just said about being stung by a jellyfish, this heavily implies, no, actually confirms that the family still hasn't learned their lesson on bad luck and still treat Lincoln like he's a parasite. And that's it. That's how the episode comes to an end. Lincoln puts on that stupid squirrel costume with a seemingly depressed look on his face, and his family does not care one bit. So you're telling me that after Lynn called out this pathetic superstition in the first place, and believing Lincoln would do something like this intentionally on purpose, followed by the family believing this dumb superstition and being willing to lock him outside of the house, completely shutting him out of their lives, refusing to let him back in after he admits his mistake, and apparently getting rid of all his furniture, after all of this, not only do they still believe he is bad luck, but they don't even realize the lesson they're supposed to learn at all? Look, Lincoln obviously needed to learn his lesson of being supportive and finding ways to have free time because how he was acting was wrong and because of the crud he was going through, but at least before he learned his lesson, nothing bad was actually happening, and it's not like his family cared that much. But in contrast to the lesson Lynn and her family should have learned, that being you should never be so paranoid over bad luck, they needed to realize this lesson because their intentional actions actually had seriously negative consequences. Lincoln did deserve some comeuppance or at least some sense knocked into him for his behavior, and unfortunately, he was ultimately the one responsible for starting this whole catastrophe in the first place. But as it's been said dozens of times before, the actions of his family are at least 10 times more utterly ridiculous and cruel, so they needed to learn their lesson way more than Lincoln. And like I said just a moment ago, that's how the episode ends. There is a chance in my opinion that it's not the worst ending to a Loud House episode, but gosh darn it, it's definitely up there as one of the worst. I guess a terrible episode wouldn't be complete without a terrible ending. There's likely more I could say, and probably another extra raging factor to this episode I didn't touch upon, but honestly, what's even the point? When talking about no such luck, it's just hate, hate, and more hate, with even a shred of something a tad bit positive. I'm glad the modern era of the Loud House doesn't have an episode that stoops to this level, because if it did, then even I would honestly have mixed thoughts regarding my opinion of the show. This episode right here will forever be both my least favorite episode of Season 2, and of course the entire series as well. So that was No Such Luck, and more than 8 years later is still the most despised episode of The Loud House. As I've said way back in the beginning, everyone's already talked about this episode dozens of times, and pretty much everyone agrees that it truly is the worst episode. From the poor characterization, to the incredibly mean-spiritedness and physical abuse towards Lincoln, to the loathsome ending, to whatever main moral this episode was trying to teach, and even how boring and uneventful the entire episode feels, I cannot think of a Loud House episode worse than this. Seriously though, what is the main moral of this episode? Is it to always support your family no matter what? Never take bad luck so seriously? Finding ways to enjoy personal time instead of lying to your family? The fact that I can't even figure out what the main moral of this episode is supposed to be just further shows how terrible the writing is. But back to the main topic, even if I do think episodes like Brawl in the Family have worse writing, no other episode in the show has a level of torment as this one. Had it not been for that impending factor of Lincoln getting locked out of the house by his own family, this episode probably would be hated a lot less. It would probably still be considered bad with how stupid everyone is, but at least it would have the chance of being a lot less worse. Unfortunately, that factor does exist within the episode, so it's easy to say that it really is that bad. But seriously, if your episode is so bad, it not only causes outrage and hatred from basically everyone, but it also leads to dozens of fanfics, plenty of hateful comments, a petition for it to be banned from live television, and is still being hated on by this very day, thus leaving a permanent yet hurtful impact on the franchise, then I think it more than deserves to be considered the absolute worst episode of the entire series. There are some people out there who think Brawl in the Family is the worst episode, and I know there's at least one person who thinks Fool Me Twice is the worst, but at the end of the day, No Such Luck is and always will be the one episode of the show that is universally despised by everyone. The impact it left is likely never going to go away, and when viewers recall the early days of this franchise, this episode will always be that black hole everyone will want to avoid. As long as this episode exists, there will always be some form of negative reception of the Loud House. However, I'll admit, it's episodes like this that make me more grateful for the modern era of the show. While yes, the quality does feel different in ways that are kind of hard for me to explain, and the reception is a lot smaller and, unfortunately, seems to be more negative than positive, but in my opinion, as long as the quality of episodes is mostly strong with little to no bad episodes, then I'll gladly still enjoy watching the show since there aren't any moments to be upset about. In fact, not only do I think all of the episodes in Season 5 and beyond are not bad, but I don't think there's a single moment in any of these episodes that is filled with so much mean-spiritedness and negativity that can infuriate anyone who watches it. No, we do not talk about that scene. Oh boy, I'm gonna make a video on the taunting hour, aren't I? And also, I'm sure the people behind the Loud House are actually well aware of how infamous this episode is. As I was working on this video late in production, I noticed on the wiki page for No Such Luck that apparently in a 2023 Q&A interview, Chris Savino acknowledges how poor the episode is, as well as how the fandom continues to act bitter towards it. He not only takes full responsibility, but also agrees to a fan theory where at least one of Lincoln's sisters, in this case Lucy, did not actually believe or go along with the bad luck plot. I don't know about you guys, but hearing something like that fills me with a bit of joy, knowing that people who work on movies or TV shows do pay attention to how their fans and viewers react. If you're wondering why I didn't bring this info up earlier in the video, like I said, it's because I was close to being done with finishing and did not want to waste time re-editing at least a chunk of the video just to mention this. But yeah, while the original era of the show does have some of the series' best episodes, like Left in the Dark, 11 Louds a Leapin', L is for Love, and more, it also has what is often considered the show's most abysmal moments. And these abysmal moments sometimes make it hard for me to go back to the early days of the franchise. Despite all of this, I still think the reception of the show would be completely different had it not been for this one singular 11-minute episode. So to end this long retrospective rant, I'll finish with this one simple sentence. No Such Luck is, and always will be, the worst and most hated episode of The Loud House. Wow, I seriously cannot believe this video is over a flipping hour. Like, I know I typed over 50 pages of words, but somehow I didn't think or realize ahead of time that each page would equate to at least 1 minute of video time. I guess I did ramble on a lot in the intro and repeat multiple points throughout the video, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. At least now I know from here on out to not underestimate the length of these videos and will aim to make them shorter in the future. As for how this video turned out, I think aside from the insane length, I did pretty good for my first time writing, recording, and editing. Obviously, it was far from looking like a really good professionally edited video, since it was my very first time doing this as I just said, but despite that, I put in all the effort and am still proud of myself for finally finishing it. Also, is it weird for someone to talk about how well they did working on their own video? It probably is, but then again, like I just said, this is my first time working on a commentary video, so I really wanted to do the best I could. Speaking of which, I actually want to hear your thoughts on not just the topic of the video, but also how the video turned out as well. Specifically, I want to hear what you guys think about what I should do to improve the quality of future commentary videos. Obviously, one thing I'll definitely do is make the videos much shorter, but I have a feeling there are other things for me to improve on as well. For example, I can probably improve the microphone quality, or work on my transition skills in both recording and editing, and changing the settings for background music as well. So yeah, if you guys have any tips or any constructive criticism and feedback, I would really appreciate it if you guys told me in the comments, and I'll be sure to read them. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I don't know how many of you guys sat down and watched the whole thing from start to finish, but if you did, it means a lot to me. Like I said, this is my first commentary video, and obviously the quality was not the best, but I really did try my hardest to make this video as good as it can be. And as I once again just said, I'll work hard to find ways that'll improve my editing skills. Oh, and I definitely will not procrastinate when working on future videos, as I highly believe that was another factor as to why this video was so long. So if you guys enjoyed the video, even just a little bit, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. As I said way back in the beginning, I promise with your support, I'll work really hard to improve the quality of my videos, as well as try to simply make more videos over a period of time without stopping for whatever reason. I know it won't be easy and will probably take up a lot of time, but I'm willing to do it and hoping to have fun with it. If not, I'd still appreciate a like and comment. Lastly, I was going to reveal some video plans I had in mind that I wanted to accomplish this year, but with how many times I delayed this video, and thus the year being almost over, there is absolutely no chance I can get them all done within the remaining time left. So I'll just say that starting from here on out, I'll work harder on future video scripts and try to get them done as soon as possible. Oh, and to make sure the videos will not be the length of an hour as well. In fact, despite what I just said, I actually do want to reveal something special that I plan to work on as soon as possible. By the end of this year and the start of next year, I plan on making 3 different ranking videos, each one being for every new video game I play, new movie I watch, and new TV show or TV show season I've seen across 2025. I've been hoping to make these videos across the whole year, and I still intend on making them a reality. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yes, I was heavily inspired by famous YouTuber Shafril's productions. I'm a huge fan of his content and strive to make videos with a very similar vibe to his. So yeah, I have a lot of work to do if I want to make this channel even bigger and more popular, and I better get started now since these videos will make themselves. So once again everybody, thank you all so much for watching, don't forget to support the channel in any way, and I'll see you guys in whatever video I have in store next. Bye!